Well, Kelly, I'm going to be the next person with no slides.
There you go.
I don't actually like them. I think I was asked to speak to see if I could do a better job than I did the last time that I spoke to the round table. I didn't almost say anything the last time I spoke to the round table, but I did have slides, and I just clicked them, and the slides spoke for themselves, I think it's fair to say. The punishment I got for doing that was I got asked to serve on a committee. Whoa. The committee produced, I thought, a good report after the kind of struggle through which committees go. Committee work is like Russian novels. A lot of pain and agony and struggle, and then bloodshed, and in the end, everybody dies, you know. So the process of leading to consensus on an Academy report. But this report, Communities in Action, Pathways to Health Equity, I recommend it to you, and in lieu of any slides, I offer you the content of that report and look specifically at the section on education, and that will cover me. I thought what I'd do quickly is try to put some context around this discussion we've been having from an education perspective, and say the first big point I want to make is that this is a good moment. There's good news. I'm good at telling good news, bad news stories. So the good news is this: after a decade or more of working on trying to get better education outcomes by introducing silver bullets, most of those have had to do with everything but getting better learning outcomes. They've had to do with trying to introduce more competition or change the governance arrangements, or call for a lot more choice, or let's just find who the bad teachers are, and if we can detect them and get them out of the system. I mean, it makes sense to people who are at some distance from the problem. It does. But with 15 years of experience moving these things around and seeing virtually no change in learning outcomes, there is a moment in the field at which the system has concluded that maybe we have to actually address the entire child, not just the academic part of the child. And that's a big deal. And I think Rochelle's comments about ESSA reflect the opening up of that realization. And just the fact, I'd argue, had more success on the health side in ESSA than maybe on the education side. To the extent that people think about education as a civil right, there's a huge debate in the field about whether ESSA made things better or made things worse. You know, the devil is in the details, and we will simply discover that in the context of this devolved authority to states and localities and the various ways in which states and communities decide to interpret and enact that law. That's the good news. Now, the bad news is that, Rochelle, if we really want a full-blown, robust system of metrics, we have a lot of work to do. So very quickly, I'm going to try and describe that work to make this harder than you've made us think that it is. Make it even harder than Denise described. What Denise, that was hard stuff she told us about. That's why I'm not a lawyer. But here's the thing. In education, the name of the game is attainment. All about trying to get better outcomes. We have a way of talking about that, not unlike folks in public health think about better health outcomes. It goes something like this. There are in-school factors that we like to attend to. Those have to do with things like early academic and cognitive skills. Think early literacy, early childhood education. They're very strong predictors of academic success. The second one is academic success. Strong predictors of whether you will actually sort of move upstream through the system. Attendance if you're not there, probably not going to benefit very much. But we think about this both as a function of time and student engagement. So we think about it less in accountability terms than we do as a sort of a measure of student behavior. But, and that's where some of the research helps us. Ninth grade GPA, really important because it's a strong predictor of whether you actually graduate. The further you are from having enough credits to graduate, the less likely it is you'll complete on time. And if you do not complete on time, things really kind of come unraveled. Then there's this thing called college readiness, because the best indicators of attainment aren't just that you graduate from high school. That doesn't get you very much anymore, but whether you actually complete some kind of post-secondary degree or credential. So on the academic side, that's what the policy folks are focused on. On the non-academic side, or out-of-school factors, I'll tick this off quickly. There's a heightened interest in, but we could use a lot of help here, on family, neighborhood, and community factors that either contribute to or inhibit attainment. I'll tick off 3 in that category. Parenting, home learning environment, and the like. We know so much more now about how those things impact readiness and engagement and the rest, trying to figure out how to measure that stuff and the legal issues associated with trying to do that are really something we're kind of trying. Let me back up and say that the stuff I'm talking about, we are currently trying to imagine and design, well, what would a national indicator system look like that would reliably tell us about these things so that the education system could weigh and balance both the in-school and the family and out-of-school factors that would give rise to better outcomes. So that's the context for this. If we already had such a thing, it would be gloriously evident in our national education policy, and there'd be a bunch of states and school districts using these things, but we don't. Second thing, community or environmental conditions. Fully understand that these things impact whether kids are ready to learn, whether they feel safe, et cetera, but we're struggling with how do we bring things that you can actually find measures for into an indicator system. And then there are neighborhood effects. I'm talking about segregation, housing patterns, transportation issues, all of which impact whether you can get to school or not, much less whether or not the conditions in your neighborhoods and communities contribute to or detract from your ability to learn. So I'm racing through that to give you this context that these are the kinds of issues we're grappling with in terms of building an indicator system. Now, I will just walk very quickly through the challenges. And I got 3 minutes. I can do that. Right. Man, if I had slides, boy, we'd be here much longer, let me tell you. There are a set of substantive challenges to doing this work. 3 of them, just to speak quickly. One is to have them be solution-oriented as opposed to problem-oriented. Most of the things we do now, they point to the problem. They don't give you any information to help you figure out what to do about the problem. So we need things that are solution-oriented. Policy relevant, and describe the performance that we actually want to see, the outcome that we're actually looking for. Then there are these technical solutions. We're much better at measuring and capturing data on what people perceive or think than we are at actually measuring the behavior, that contributes to the problem. Another one is that provides the analytic links among key components. So Denise's issues about information sharing are very relevant here. If you can't link data on health conditions to the provision of resources at the school or classroom level, you have a problem. Well, let me say another way. People in the system won't identify that problem if they don't think they can do something about it. All that does is put them at risk. A third one, malleability. No point in coming up with measures and indicators of things that can't be changed or impacted. So this attention to, well, what can you influence or do something about matters a lot. And this is where Kelly's example about health coverage is pertinent. You could actually do something about that. You could get them covered. And then voila, lots of good things happen. So, and then finally, if you're on the education side and your indicators and measures don't reveal causal linkages to attainment, then your interest in them wanes. Because attainment is as important to folks in the education sector as better health outcomes are to you. So this means, among other things, I would say the thing about ESSA Rochelle is that the indicators are largely conceived and advanced in an accountability context. We want to hold the adults accountable for producing certain kind of outcomes. If the adults don't actually know how to do the thing we want them to do, just holding them accountable for it won't work. And that's kind of where we are. So big challenges, predictiveness, strength of the underlying research, data reporting levels, up, down, horizontal, and feasibility. And in our world, everything is harder, Denise, thanks to the lawyers, to do than it should be. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you. Yeah.